Hello, this is Michael from League of Items, and in this video, I want to go over some of the changes in 8.4 that are going to impact the jungle. So specifically, there are a couple of champions that's going to impact a lot. So Evelynn's slight buff means that you'll see her more. Fiddlesticks, I hope people actually try to play Fiddlesticks. He's a really interesting champion, and it forces players to play differently. It's kind of similar to Zac because once he hits level 6, you have to think about the interesting gank paths that he has. And his Q is very annoying to play against, the thing that disorients you and like you walk around feared or whatever. That's really annoying to play against. And silence is good on Darkwind, so now you have an easier clear. And his cooldown and his ultimate was also decreased, so that's another buff. Rengar had a lot of changes. His Q was reverted to the way it was before the rework. I think that is, I'm not sure if it's a buff, but it's a little easier to play around. You don't get a move when you Q, but I think it's still pretty good. His passive was changed slightly. The leap speed was nerfed a little, which is bad. Not a huge deal. His W was buffed with the decrease, and it gets rid of some crowd control, so that's good. Thrill of the Hunt was changed. Enemies can see him at a shorter distance now, so you can see him from less far away, which is bad. Rengar vision range. He can see enemy champions from a pretty far distance, and the reason that's important is because he has the increase in movement speed, and he also has Isle Scout ahead. So whenever he reveals an enemy with his ultimate, they're going to stay revealed for the duration, that's really good. And then last but not least, Rengar's leap out of his ultimate now deals 30% total attack damage as bonus damage, and shreds 24 of the target's armor at max rank for 4 seconds. That's really good. That's a really good buff, and it makes him more of a team-oriented champion too, because now that he's shredding armor, it helps other champions do damage. So I think Rengar is going to be very good this patch. Volibear, these were slight. No one plays Volibear right now in competitive, and I'm not sure this is going to push him into the pro scene, but it's at least interesting. And with some of the other changes, gank heavy junglers might actually come back. So Rolling Thunder, increase in movement speed towards champions, and when he changes direction, his bonus move speed decays. So it's better than what it used to be. Frenzy's cooldown is halved if it's used on a minion. That's good. That's good for lane Volibear more than jungle Volibear. And then his E was buffed, slightly knocks back enemies. I'd need to see that. I need to see how that actually works in game, but it sounds like a buff. And then enemies who are dashing or airborne are dealt additional magic damage. And this is going to be good because it's just another source of damage for Volibear when he's ganking. So let's go to the next spot. So Tracker's Knife was removed, and this is actually going to be very important. Tracker's Knife being removed means that it's going to be less difficult for the enemy. It's going to be more difficult for the enemy team to know where the enemy jungler is, unless they compensate for it by building a support item. And I think it's viable. I'm just not sure which one would be the best for a jungler, because you spend 350 gold, and then once you upgrade it, you'll get the wards again. So it could be worth it to have another champion with warding, even though Tracker's Knife is gone. So you'll have blue or red smite, but you can still have wards as long as you get one of the support items. The change to precision is a nerf to junglers directly. Instead of 18% attack speed, you're going to have 9% attack speed. Sorcery and precision is a little bit better because now you get 9% attack speed, but all the other ones are worse. Or actually, no. Precision with domination is hurt. Domination plus precision is buffed with the 9% attack speed. Precision and sorcery was nerfed. Sorcery with precision as secondary was buffed. The keystone change to press the attack is not that big of a deal. You do a little bit more damage, so it helps with early ganks. because when you're ganking, you want upfront damage. It's not going to be an extended fight. Press the attack is better in extended fights. The resolve tree had a bunch of changes. Bone plating was added, which is really cool. So unflinching is now in the bottom row. Bone plating, after taking damage from an enemy champion, their next 3 spells or attacks against you deal 20 to 50 less damage. This is going to be a lot of early game mitigation. So if you're afraid of being invaded, take bone plating. If you need a little extra health when you go into a gank, take bone plating, because it could be the difference between surviving a gank or surviving an invade or something like that. Second wind was changed. Now there are 4 runes in this one part of the tree, which is kind of funny. Second wind is pretty good, but it's not for junglers really. This is more for people in lane who are taking harassment. So for junglers, Iron Skin and Conditioning are still the best. And then in the last row, Overgrowth and Revitalize are still good. Most people take Revitalize, but Unflinching. With Unflinching, you gain 10% tenacity for each summoner spell on cooldown. So if your flash is on cooldown, you get 10%. If Smite and Flash are on cooldown, you get 20%. And you also gain 15% slow resist, as well as more tenacity for 10 seconds. That's a lot of time whenever you cast a summoner spell. So if you run into a lane and smite someone, or smite a minion or something, you're going to gain slow resist and tenacity. I think it's going to be pretty good. Not sure if it's better than Iron Skin or Conditioning. Or wait. So yeah, Unflinching probably becomes better than Revitalize immediately. So I completely changed my mind. Now a resistance tree, or a resolve tree, would look like bone plating. I think bone plating is going to be the way to go. Iron Skin or Conditioning with Unflinching or Revitalize, depending on the champion kit. I think Unflinching is definitely going to be usable now, and it's going to be actually good, because you get that boost in tenacity and slow resist, which is definitely necessary for junglers. Last up, the inspiration tree contraption. So perfect timing being changed. Commencing stopwatch goes from 6 minutes to 10 minutes. So that means the first 10 minutes of the game, the people you're ganking will not have a stopwatch. And that's a big deal, because that's an extra 4 minutes of time where you can get a successful gank off that could potentially be stopped by a stopwatch. And then last but not least is the time warp tonic change. And this is a sneaky little thing, because you wouldn't think that this is going to impact jungle immediately. But with Hunter's Potion, this is going to impact the jungle, because potions, elixirs, and biscuits, Hunter's Potion counts, last 20% longer. And while you have a consumable active, you get 5% increased move speed. And I think that the uptime with Hunter's Potion is going to be close to 100%, because every time that you take a camp, you get a charge of Hunter's Potion. So that means 8 seconds times 5, that's 40 seconds without... That's 40 seconds of 5% increased move speed without taking into consideration that you can kill monsters and get more charges. So I think Hunter's Potion is actually going to be worthwhile on champions, because you're getting that move speed increase at almost 100% uptime. I haven't run the numbers, I haven't tried it out, but I'm pretty sure Hunter's Potion will have close to a 100% uptime. And that's going to be very good. Oh, and the blast cones were changed. That's going to hurt aggressive junglers in the early game. So overall, I think the Tracker's Knife change is good for early game junglers. Some of the rune changes are actually really cool. Specifically bone plating, unflinching, and time warp tonic. Time warp tonic, that's something that's going to change the jungle, because you're going to need to buy a Hunter's Potion for that 5% increased move speed. I think that's a really, really interesting change, and Riot really hasn't done anything like this for a while. So if I'm right, and Time Warp Tonic is very popular, then you will see more people take Iron Skin, because Iron Skin gives you 5% armor for 3 seconds whenever you restore at least 20 health. Use a specific consumable or are shielded. So you don't need to gain 20 health every time. You just need to use a consumable. And yep, So that's it. Those are the changes to the jungle in patch 8.4, and I think it's going to do a lot to change the jungle.